ever. Hey, this is Monday/Tuesday, March 5th/6th. Because of our screwy block scheduling thing, it kind of covers both days. Yay. So if you missed either one of those 2 days, they'll both be covered on here as we go through all kinds of fun things. The drawback is, I will tell you now, those of you who are watching this at home on the home version, it's going to be an extra long video, which you can probably tell by looking at the time down there, like over there, it says like 4 hours, or however long it is, because the block schedule thing, we get like a whole bunch of talking to go through today, which just makes things all kinds of fun. Let's see. Your Camp T friend list, if you've not turned it in. If you turned it in previously, you still need to turn in a new one because all the old ones are gone. And so I had to reset all of that. And so that is going to be due by tonight. And then if you're under 10 B points, you give up your friend list. If you still owe your permission slip, you also give up your friend list. But you have until Friday to turn in to get up to 10 B points. And you also have until then to get your permission slip turned in. And then block schedule today. Homework is officially due tomorrow. This is your homework that is officially due tomorrow, which, of course, you're not working on right now because I have to come around and knock your iPad off your desk, and that would be awful for one of you. And then, let's see, hopefully it covers all of that. Then, let's see, with you and the stories we got through, I think did we get all the way to the punishment of Titans who fought against him?
Yes.
We got to Atlas.
The brothers, go into,
Into rectangles and squares?
Yes.
Rectangles and squares.
And then,
So we got through Kronos and his children,
Yeah.
and then the whole fighting against them, and then the children, and then yay, and then his children, and then yay. Does he do it twice? I got the same slide for more than once. I do. Weird. And who is the general of the Titan army?
Atlas.
Good job. And then, let's see, how does Zeus win the war? Was he
Using the brothers'
monsters.
going down there, freeze all of them? And then we have what weapon does Zeus get?
Bucket.
An invisible helmet.
Bucket.
He does not get both. He's not greedy. Good try. He does get the bucket of lightning bolts.
Oh.
Poseidon.
He gets water.
There you go, stabby stick.
Ocean.
My higher, what does Hades get?
Invisible.
The lightning of invisibility.
Did it sound nearly as convincing on that one? The invisibility helmet of lightning bolts.
Oh, I didn't mean both of them to be together. I didn't
And then at the end of the war, let's see, when Zeus ends up winning, where do the Cyclops go?
Puts the
Next
mountain.
Where do the big ugly monsters go?
Tartarus.
All the Titans who fought against Zeus, what does he do with them? Put in Tartarus. What happens to all the humans?
They
They
die.
die.
They get crushed and die. And then this is where the whole planet sort of got smashed with the whole throwing each other off the mountains and hitting each other, giant mountains, and throwing elbows into each other. It ends up destroying bits and pieces of it. We have the sky, which was a gigantic bowl on top of the mountain that was over there. So you have the gigantic bowl, and that mountain started to get destroyed and started to slide off. And that's where Zeus decides that he's going to have a special punishment for the strongest of all the gods that led the war against him, and that would be, and that's where he makes Atlas step up on top of a mountain, lift the sky onto his back, and hold it for the rest of time. Now, with that, the drawback is anytime you see artistic representations of Atlas, it's not a picture of him holding up the sky. It's a picture of him holding up the earth. Mr. Brovicast, which one is it? Him holding up the sky. But the drawback is, if you're an artist, it's really hard to draw a picture of someone holding up sky, because sky's invisible. So you just look awkward. And it doesn't really look like anything's happening. So they end up switching it out in art and putting a globe up there, because that's much easier for them to draw. But in actual Greek mythology, he held the sky up onto his back. Now, the problem here is, let's say Zoe gets in trouble for talking nonstop. I'm like, Zoe, here's your punishment. I'm going to make you hold a bowling ball above my head while I lay down on the ground. If you drop the bowling ball, I'm going to die. I need you to hold this bowling ball for the rest of time. What's Zoe going to do?
Drop it.
Wow, how quickly I can just kill you right there. Good, I'm glad you guys jumped on him so quickly. Drop the bowling ball. And so Zeus realizes punishing Atlas in this way is not going to work, because Atlas is just going to drop the sky and crush all of them. Might not kill them, but getting crushed by a sky is probably not the fun way to go. So Zeus comes up with a deal with Atlas and goes, all right, so that you don't crush everyone that's out here, Zeus goes down into Tartarus and finds Atlas's daughters. There's 9 of them. 9 girls called the Hesperides. And he brings up the 9 Hesperides and frees them. Even though they fought against Zeus, he lets them go free. And they set up a little village up here at the bottom of Atlas's mountain. And they're allowed to go visit him whenever he wants. Which means, if he drops the sky, not only does he end up killing Zeus, or at least crushing Zeus, he'd also crush his own daughters. So because of that agreement, Atlas continues to hold up the sky and never drop it and stays up there to the end of time. He's still up there today. You can still write him letters. He just can't write you back because, he has no arms because they're holding up the sky. You're still thinking about dropping a bowling ball on you, aren't you? And you're like, dreams come true. Zoe.
Are his daughters like immortal? Would they die?
No, they're also titans, so.
Okay, so they would like just
Yeah,
on
you
the
just
back.
sit there and get crushed also. Also a fun way to go. Zeus and his 2 brothers then decide that they're going to split the world into 3 different kingdoms so they can try to be as equal as possible. And the 3 of them work together. Zeus goes, all right, I get first dibsies because I'm the one that freed all of you and I'm kind of the best looking and the coolest and all that. So I get to do the first part. And Zeus for his kingdom chooses?
Everything around the land.
Yeah, pretty much he's like, I take everything I can see on the land and everything up from the land, including all the titans that are at everything. Everything's mine. It's all mine. Deal. So Zeus takes everything on the land and everything on up from there, which actually works out all right because Poseidon doesn't want any of that. What does Poseidon want? Water. Specifically, he wants the ocean. He's like, I'll take everything in the ocean. And so Poseidon's very happy to go out there. He's like, you can have all the land stuff and the sky stuff. I want none of that. I want everything out in the ocean because I have my new stick that allows me to control fish and water. You just put my desk over there. I'm going to call this new thing a fish stick. This is the greatest thing ever. I can stab like 3 fish at one time. And then Hades is like, I don't really want anything. And it's just like, well, you got to take something, brother. It's all right. And Hades was like, well, I don't want to talk to people. And if I rule an area, I'm going to have to talk to people. So no thanks. Zeus goes, well, why don't you take everything under the ground? Because down there are no people. And Hades goes, so you promise I don't have to like interact with anybody? And Zeus goes, no. Even the titans that are down there, you don't have to talk to. You can just ignore them. Hades goes, all right, I'll take everything under the ground. Done. That's my area. So each of the 3 takes their own. And so Hades gets everything that goes under the ground. Zeus gets everything from the ground on up. Poseidon gets everything in the world of squishy. Zeus, now the king of all the gods, things are going well, immediately takes over the old castle kingdom that they had going before. And this old castle kingdom that the Titans were using is called? And how many thrones are on there? 12. So Zeus starts setting up his own squad and decides that he's going to fill in all these thrones with other Olympians. He's going to create the new ruling class of 12 Olympians that are now going to take over. Which leads us to your homework assignment. So here's where we're going to do it together. It's only technically homework because we're going to do it together. You just have to sort of write it down as we go over it because we're going to write down the 12 gods, what it is they are the god of to help you remember. And then we're going to write down a little hand sign or motion to help you remember which god it is. And then we're going to give you B points for remembering it.
Oh, so this is...
It is that thing. Yeah, just like we did with short stories. And then we also did a similar thing with poetry. And we did a similar thing with the Olympian gods. But this is so much easier because it's longer. It's early. You guys aren't paying attention. Binnell!
My notebook's completely full. Can I use a scratch piece of paper?
Yeah, and now you're going to have to copy everything into the new notebook.
Okay.
Okay. I will write down a note to start torturing you if you don't get it moved over. That's choices. True, but then when he turns in the notebook, he wouldn't get to turn it in because I don't accept it if it's not all in the same notebook. And you have to do it all in the same night.
Just like do it today and then fill it in, but then not tell you.
Yeah.
So you don't do it.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility.
What?
How is it?
Yeah. That's confusing.
Most things kids do confuse me. I do like how you guys just nod. Oh yeah, kids are confusing. I can't argue that one. I'm going to make this screen disappear in just a moment, regardless of how much whining you do, although that is adorable. For the most part, there's not a whole lot there that you need. You're creating a chart that has 12 gods going down. You know that because there's 12 Olympians. And then you have 3 columns going across. Name, what they do, and action, but you'll figure that out on the next page anyway. The only other thing you need is the title, but you really don't need that because it's just a list of Olympians. that you're going to memorize. Once again, I just gave you all the information, and I have faith in your ability to figure it out. Some of you are smart-ish. If you're not smart-ish, you'll have a good job of faking it.
I'm not done.
Wait. I was
Yay! Then, jumping into our first one. The first god to get a throne on Mount Olympus is going to be?
Zeus.
Zeus. Because he's like, I get first dibsies of any throne that I want to have, and so I can do whatever I want. For he's the god of what? Well, technically he's the god of lightning or thunder, but that really does not show up in stories. It's not an important thing to remember to help you out.
Sky.
As far as Zeus is important in how our stories, the main role he plays is
Sky.
king of all the gods.
Oh.
The fact that he be the king usually just involves him trying to assert the fact that people need to pay attention to him because he has ego issues. Nothing I understand myself, but I've heard other people have those things. Brush.
So then we say that up there the god of war and then down here what was on the other side, so what we say, so I'm confused.
You should probably just tear out that page and throw away your notebook.
Don't do that.
Or,
Do that.
I have faith in your ability to figure it out. One or the other. I'm happy either way. For the hand sign that we're going to do with Zeus, pretty much every time we see the guy, whether it's the one over there, or it's the one over there, or the one over here, he's posing in a very similar way, which is you're holding up your lightning bolt, and then usually figuring out who you want to smite with it. So you'll
Statue of
hold your
Liberty.
lightning bolt, point to whoever deserves the most smiting, and you say, Zeus, king of all the gods. It could be any random person in that area. My arm itch.
Reminds me of the Statue of Liberty.
Zeus, king of all the gods. Just be careful when you're holding your lightning bolt and doing your smiting, that if you do choose to bring your arm forward, that you don't have a pencil in it, because you might end up actually making someone into a unicorn or a cyclops, or a uniclops, or
Whoa.
a cycorn.
Wouldn't that be so?
Psychor.
Sideboard.
I find it very funny, like once I was in Miss Randall's class and then me and Riley went out in the hallway and then I like heard you in like third period, you say like the exact same jokes.
Yeah.
Throughout the
You
whole
use the
day.
exact same jokes.
And the
And we were
same
like,
like
That's not
words.
cool. That's unoriginal.
It's not. You might not know this, but if you guys have ever heard these things called stand-up comics, they sometimes do shows that you can watch. They do the same jokes every time. Oh, there's these things called musicians. They play these things called songs, and they'll play the same song every time. It's sort of what you do, and you have to repeat the same thing over and over.
Why don't you
The
change
joy
the
is the
way
fact that I
it's
get to
going?
sort of times make the jokes a little better, and I switch them out every once in a while, but a lot of times if a joke works, why get rid of it? And it's the first time you've heard it, and which is why I usually feel bad whenever I have like other teachers come in and like watch me for the day. Like you get to watch, I'm like, I'm real amusing once, slightly amusing twice. Third time it kind of gets tiring. By the time you've watched me do something 6 times, it's kind of a pain in the patootie. I know because I have to watch me do it 6 times. It's kind of rough. I really like me, so. After Zeus, our next one to see, that's a joke that only you guys got. So sometimes I throw in original ones. After Zeus, stop shaking your head at me. The next one to get a throne is.
His wife.
Would be Zeus's choice is Poseidon. You're correct. The problem is, as soon as he tries to do that, someone else goes, and he goes, I meant Hera. Hera, you would get the next throne. Because even though he would prefer to give it to his brother, because hashtag sexism rules, Hera was the hashtag I will kill you if you do that. So Hera ends up winning that argument, and he's like, yes, dear, you're correct. I would never do something to make you mad. Except for like 12 more times in our stories coming up today. But other than that, he would never make her mad. The struggle's real.
Didn't Hera make the Milky Way?
No, that's, I think, Nestle. Or is it
Oh, like Nesquik.
Hershey's?
Hershey's
Milky Way?
chocolate? Wait, we get
Wait,
chocolate.
the milk
What did I miss?
Is
That-
Talking like the Milky Way.
Isn't that like
Nothing.
chocolate
Oh.
powder?
Like the Milky Way? We heard a story last year.
So with Hera, we have, let's see, she is the god of marriage and the god of childbirth, but for the most part that's not going to play a role in our stories, except the fact that she tries to ruin marriages and then tries to have babies. But for the most part, our stories with her main role in all of them is going to be...
Queen of Gods.
Yeah, Mrs. Zeus, queen of all the gods. Her main role is being mad at her husband.
Irony.
Unfortunately, that wasn't really a joke. That was actually just what her job is in the story, is just be mad at Zeus. I mean, I get it's a joke in the fact that it kind of is demeaning to women, but I mean, that's not a funny joke. That's a sad joke. But back to Hera. For our hand sign to go along with her, what you're going to do is take one hand and you're going to make like a C, and then you're going to take your other hand and you're going to make a C. Now realize like this, not like this. That's creeper. Or something like this, and then you bring your two circles together,
You make a
turn it down, and you place it on top of your head, and it makes a little crown. Because that way we know that if you would like to have a sparkly crown, you're more than welcome to, and have your sparkly crown. Just realize there's a difference between I'm a queen and I'm a moose.
Computers use their paws.
See, even though I've now done that joke like 8 times in the last 2 days, it still works the first time you hear it, you bunch of haters. That's what you laugh at. I'm a hater. It's hilarious. And with Hera, the next one to get a throne after her would be
Poseidon.
This is where Zeus is like, can I give Poseidon his throne now? And Hera's like, I don't care, I got mine. So Poseidon then gets to step up and get his throne. And he's like, yeah,
So
baby.
does Zeus just choose all the people to get thrown?
Pretty much, him being the ruler of all these things, he gets to be all kinds of fancy and special.
Why?
That's the fancy and special part. With Poseidon, he is the god of
Water.
technically ocean. He didn't really care about streams or rivers. Like, I've got a swimming pool. He doesn't really care. It's more the fact that it's the big ocean with like the whaley bits and stuff like that. That was the one. There were other gods that were gods of rivers and lakes that technically worked for him. He just didn't really care for the most part.
He didn't pay them.
Sure.
Oh.
Ooh, I like your thinking though. My thought was if I took you and dropped you into the middle of his kingdom, there's a couple different things you would do. Hopefully most of you would do the swimming thing to prevent the drowning. Some of you who are not good at swimming would probably just dog paddle, would be the best you could do. And then for a handful of others of you, you're just going to sink like a stone.
I would get out and drop a bowling ball on you.
Now, that
I just kick it.
has no connection whatsoever. That does sound like a random threat. I would kick you in the shin. Oh, what a fun game you play. I have had kids do the weird little watery thing, but that just looks weird. Like, you're like, rawr, rawr.
What about this?
It looks like you're trying to sell cars at a parking lot. Whatever. You're welcome. That was an original joke just for you.
Wait,
That was
It
good.
really was.
Yes.
really was.
No, I just like asterisk in there every time I do that one. It's like asterisk period.
Couldn't you do the wave thing?
In all honesty,
Like you're on a surfboard.
whatever works for you is fine with me.
What are we doing, Zoe?
Asterisks.
Well, an asterisk is the thing with the little. I was gonna do a hashtag is easy. Hashtag asterisk. Doesn't it look like a thing with points going in different directions?
It is now.
I got it.
Rush.
Can I do this instead?
Sure, I'm fine with that. Our next one to get a throne after Poseidon is
Oh,
Hades.
is Hades, not Riley having a stroke or whatever that was happening over there. Hades is our next one to get a throne. And here's where those of you using Pin get upset because he's not on our list. Hades gets a throne, but he's also the first god to give a throne up. As soon as he gets the throne, comes back up to Mount Olympus, Zeus begins explaining to all of his brothers and sisters what their jobs are going to be. He's like, as an Olympian, we're sort of the ruling body, so whenever there's an issue, other gods are going to come to us and present their issues. We're going to listen to them, make decisions. Anytime a god has a problem, they get a chance to come up and approach us and talk to us, present that. Hades goes, whoa, what was the last part? And Zeus is like, gods get a chance to come up and talk to us, present problems. Hades goes, oh, yeah, I don't want any part of that. I want the part where no one talks to me. And Zeus goes, well, having a throne means people get to talk to you. Hades goes, you can have it back. And he just hands back the throne and chooses to go back down to the underworld and goes down there to have his own throne. So Hades willingly gives up his throne, wants nothing to do with it. So our next one to get a throne and keep it is...
Demeter.
Nicely done. Demeter is our next one to actually get a throne and keep it.
Then her daughter,
Persephone.
Persephone
She's
gets
my
stolen.
favorite.
We're going to get to her story.
She's
She's nasty.
Because
Because I dressed up as Demeter and I had a little flower crown.
Oh, yeah.
Adorable. With Demeter. She
And then she
is
got
the god of
Rain.
grains and harvest. Just realize there's a difference between grains and harvest and brains. That would be zombies. And they're not gods at all. Actually, quite the opposite. Although they do live forever, which is weird. And with her being the god of grains and harvest, I realize most of you probably don't interact much with grains and harvest. But there is a chance, there is a thing that some of you get forced to do in the summertime, which is similar to harvesting and close to the
plant
grains.
flowers.
Which is when your parents send you out once a week to go out and mow the lawn. And so what I'm going to have you do for this one is the lawnmower. If you're unfamiliar with how the lawnmower works, it's when you have to have your lawnmower and you have to start the mower, mow the lawn. For those of you on camera, there you go. If you would prefer to do the sprinkler,
Because you gotta grow the grass first.
grow the grass.
Start the mower.
If you want to work both of them in there, that's fine with me. We'll work that into Riley having her stroke. It works out well. Or you can do both at the same time.
Oh God.
It's not going to look weird. I can't wait till we have our next school days. Have you guys all out there.
Doing the sprinkle mowers.
Sprinkle mower.
He like has to.
After Demeter, our next one to get a throne is
Hestia.
nicely done. Hestia, the one who is right up here above where my hire is. Hestia, in the picture, she looks like she's made out of smoke because in the picture, she's made out of smoke. Hestia was the god of fireplaces and safe homes, which was really important to the Greeks at the time because if you didn't have a good safe home and a fireplace, you didn't have a place to keep food. And in the wintertime, then your children became kidsicles. So if you didn't want your children to become kidsicles, you would pray to Hestia, please give us a good fireplace to cook our food and not cook our children. And so because of that, Hestia was important. Hestia is not on our list. She is going to be, at some point, you'll learn not to write it down until you actually see it on there. It's how learning works. It's good for you. Hestia is our second god to give up a throne. But she does not give up her throne until very late in Greek mythology. She has a throne throughout all of these Olympians up there until we get towards the very end, and then she gives hers up for a different reason than Hades. So she's technically considered the 13th Olympian, but she's not actually on our list. Sebastian. We'll find out when we get there. Because we're going to get to those here in just a moment. So we have Hestia. Ooh, which, by the way, to help you out, doesn't help you guys out at home, but with our posters up here, the reason that they're in this order, Kronos swallows the 6 babies. These are the 6 babies that he swallows. The 2 ones that give up their thrones, I put at the end. So you have Hestia giving up a throne, Hades giving up a throne. The 4 in the middle keep their thrones. The 2 in the middle of those 4, Zeus and Hera, are the ones who are married to each other. So I tried to help you out with how the posters are arranged. So when you look up there, you can see which ones gave up thrones, which ones got married, which ones were together, stuff like that.
Will you leave them up there for the test?
Yeah, that's my whole goal with it.
Okay.
It's a gift. Now, Zeus has filled in 5 of his thrones. At this point, he wants to keep filling in the rest of the thrones, but he has run out of brothers and sisters. He only wants to fill it in with people who he feels are related to him, because he wants to be able to trust them. And so with that issue, he can't give it to his parents because he tried to kill his father, and his mother wants nothing to do with it. Can't do his grandparents because, once again, one of them got killed and the other one is the earth. And so he only has one option left to fill it in with people related to him, and that would be
Children.
his children. So Zeus decides to start filling in the rest of the thrones with his children. This is not an immediate thing. This takes place over the course of the next several years. As children are born, they eventually get thrones, and so the Olympian list slowly grows. Him and Hera have 4 babies together, 2 of which get to have thrones, 2 of which do not. Those 4 babies are 2 girls, Hebe and Ilithyia, and 2 boys, Hephaestus and Ares. The 2 that get thrones are?
Boys.
That is sexist.
It is incredibly sexist. Not only is it sexist, it gets worse when you find out what happens to Hebe and Ilithyia.
They
And
get
so he gets to... We don't eat all of our babies, just the delicious ones. And so we find out with Hephaestus and Ares, they're the next 2 that are going to get thrones up there. With Hephaestus, do you have a quick little backstory for him on when he gets his throne? One, not only is he a god, but he is the only god to be crippled, and technically ugly too. Which is why up there he's got the little crutch, and then back there he's got a crutch, and then over here he's sitting down. He was the only crippled god. There are 2 versions of the story on how it happened. Both involve his parents. One involves Zeus, one involves Hera. Both stories involve his parents being horrible people. So I usually focus more on the Zeus one, but if you want to do the Hera one, you're more than welcome to look that up and go in that direction if you want. But the Zeus story of how he gets crippled goes with when Hephaestus was a wee young lad, was running around Mount Olympus one day and heard arguing going on inside the house, and stumbled into his mom and dad yelling at each other. Zeus and Hera going into this knockdown, drag-out fight about apparently Zeus being friendly and Hera not approving of it and yelling at him about these choices. Hephaestus decides to step up on his mom's side and starts yelling at his father too. You're a horrible father. Why would you make mommy sad? Nobody likes when you do that. Bad daddy. Zeus does not like his wife yelling at him, gets even more angry at his son yelling at him, so picks up Hephaestus and shakes him. You're just a bad kid. Why would you do that? And then holds him above his head and then throws him as hard as he can. Well, one, yes, I know you shouldn't throw children. I only threw my own a couple times when they were younger. We played astronaut. It was fun. You like swing around, like, whee! You throw them up in the air. Usually they land on the bed. And so when they don't, you play crash landing. And so he throws Hephaestus. I'm kidding. She wore a helmet. And then see, once again.
Not an original joke.
No, that was a joke for you guys, actually.
I don't believe that.
Sorry, yeah, talking about my daughter's brain damage. That was just a gift for you guys. I don't gift all my kids stories of my daughter's brain damage. Now, joking about daughter's brain damage, that's just for you guys too. But back to Hephaestus. Throwing Hephaestus as hard as he can. Throwing your child is bad, but the fact that he lives in a house that doesn't really have walls, just has pillars everywhere, even worse. Because Hephaestus doesn't hit a wall. Hephaestus keeps on going. And then what makes it even worse is that normally you would land in the lawn, except their house is on top of a mountain. So there is no lawn to land in. So when Hephaestus goes, wah! He flies out over this open space, waving his little arms going, I made a poor choice, I made a poor choice, I made a poor choice, as he was flying out over the ocean. Starts to come down, out over the ocean, sees an island, tries to aim for the island so he doesn't want to drown. And as he gets towards the island, turns himself around so he's not going to hit head first, because that'd be really bad. He's not my child. And then ends up landing leg first onto the island. When he does, the impact goes all onto one leg. That one leg just goes, and all the bones turn to dust. The good news is it only hurts one leg. The bad news is it only hurts one leg. So all that impact goes into that one. Normally, as a god, you heal back pretty easily. But when you're a baby god, you have to have this stuff called nectar and ambrosia, which is essentially god Gatorade, which allows you to heal back. Zeus was so upset with Hephaestus, he refuses to let anyone go down here and give him the god Gatorade. Refuses to let anyone go down and visit him at all. Banishes him from Mount Olympus. So Hephaestus grows up on this island with one rashy little leg, and whenever he walks around, it's all crooked, looks like an accordion, makes a weird little and whenever he walks around. Grows up on there for years, cursing his father. I wasn't going to say that, but as he curses his father and shakes his little hand like, I hate you, father. Grows up to become a young man, a young adult. 20-ish is whatever that is, translates into God years. Till one day, wandering around this big island, he hears thunder on the island, but it's a sunny day. Thinks it's his father coming back to visit him. Gets a little scared, decides to try and seek out his dad, confront him, but the thunder is not coming from a place he can locate. The thunder is coming from inside of a mountain. Ends up crawling into this mountain, finding a cave into it, gets to the middle of the island, there's a middle of the mountain, and there's a huge open cavern. The thunder, not coming from his father, coming from 3 gigantic creatures in the middle of this mountain. Those 3 gigantic creatures are? The Cyclops. The Cyclops see this young crippled boy and take pity on him and go, come here, young crippled boy, come get in my white band. And so they bring him in and they start training him. He gives them the story and says, hey, my dad threw me out. Crippled me like, well, we like your dad. He freed us, but people make poor choices. So they decide to train Hephaestus to be able to do the only thing that they are really good at. So aside from the Cyclops, he becomes the only one that's really skilled at
Stabbing.
Metalworking. Blacksmith.
stabbing daddy or metalsmiths, one or the other. And so he becomes the best metalsmith to ever exist aside from the Cyclops because he learned the skills from them. Eventually, he does make his way back up to Mount Olympus. As he gets better with his metalsmithing, he sends gifts up to his father. There's a great story about him sending a cursed chair up to his father when he gets stuck and great stuff. And eventually Zeus is so impressed, he's like, that thing was evil, you're a genius, come on up. Because Zeus had morals. And brings Hephaestus up to live on Mount Olympus. For the hand sign we're going to do for Hephaestus, one, it would be fun to make you like walk in a circle, you get a leg, but that seemed kind of mean, plus you'd all point us, right, Laika? So because of that, I figure we'll do the other thing, which is the other thing we see him doing, which is hammering. And this is where we figure out that many of you should never use tools. You're like, look, Mr. Brovicast, I'm hammering. You should also probably wear a helmet anytime you fix something. Why does it hurt my brain every time I hammer
Hammer
things?
your head.
Who knows?
That was not original.
Actually, it was. Now it's just fun having you guys try to figure out which ones I make up for you.
Yeah, why keep it up if it's original?
If it feels like it's a bad joke, it's probably just for you guys that have not like tested it the previous 12 times. So whenever it falls flat, like, yeah, that was just for us. Unless it makes fun of one of you individually, then that's...
The cripple one was definitely not.
The cripple one.
Well, no one else is crippled in your.
Or the one when you
Oh,
told
yeah,
me
that
that I
one.
was having
No,
a
the
stroke.
one where you like walked in a circle.
Yeah, that was that good too. That one I just came up with like 7th period yesterday, but I
Yeah,
kind
see,
of
it's
tested on
not
it. So you guys are one of the second ones to ever hear about it. So.
Yeah, Andrew
What
had
does it
told me I
matter?
had a stroke for moving my hand.
Ares, our next one, is the other one that gets a throne on Mount Olympus. With Ares, he grows up just being a gigantic jerk. He's just not a good person whatsoever. Is a bully, beats up other gods, beats up other humans, gets beat up himself. Whenever he feels he's about to lose a fight, would throw dirt in someone else's face and then hit him with a chair, then drive over him with a car. Whatever it took for him to win was all he cared about. So when he eventually gets to sort of become a god of something, being the fact that he's a gigantic jerk face, he becomes the god of the god of war. You combine God and war, you get jar. Apparently in my head. Becomes the god of war, and not the god of respectable war. With the hand sign for him, I want you to remember the fact that he is a god of war, but he's also a gigantic wussy. So to help you remember that he's a gigantic wussy, I'm going to teach you how to fight, how I learned to fight when I was a kid. When I was a kid, before I was a wrestler, I was also a gigantic wussy, and then later on I became a wrestler. And I read a lot, so because of that I had a really big brain, and so I learned to protect the brain if you were to get into a fight. So you want to take whatever your dominant punching hand is going to be, and it goes across your throat to protect your throat area for any kind of jabs into the soft tissue. Take your offhand it goes behind your elbow to protect your face. That way it sort of works like a face mask. And it gives your other arm freedom to then come at a person and just start swinging. And if they punch you in the face, it works like a little absorby face masky thing. It is frighteningly effective. I have never once been beaten up when using this in a fight.
Mr. Rogan, I just have a question. If you're fighting, how would you punch them this side?
Well, you don't let them get on that. See, if you have that kind of strategy, then your brain's not big enough and you should not be using this. Obviously, you never let them get to that side. I guarantee you, if you have some big thug coming at you, he's like, come here, I'm going to beat you up. And you're like, all right, man, it's you and me, let's go. When he hits the ground laughing, it buys you enough time to run. When he gets back up, he's like, all right, where did you go next? I'm out of here! And you just be taking off running. It's the mind gift. You're all horrible, horrible people. Oh, they saw it.
I guess you could hit them this side because you switch like this.
Here you go.
Please.
At this point, Zeus. Oh, I forgot to tell you about the girls.
Is that original? No, do it.
Zeus had 2 other kids with Hera.
understand.
Hebe. No, you
You're
don't.
not covering your face.
You should just curl into a ball here, and it'll work best for you. The 2 daughters, Hebe and Ilithia, don't get thrones. And there's no good explanation for it aside from the fact that Zeus is just a jerk. He goes, sons, you get thrones. Daughters, you exist. And then just sort of moved on from there. Of Hebe and Ilithia, Ilithia doesn't even show up in stories. She's born, Zeus goes, you have a name, and just kind of like goes, and like shoos her away. She never really shows up anything else in Greek mythology. Hebe does a little bit better, kind of. Hebe, when she gets old enough, she goes, do I get a throne too, Daddy? He goes, you get the next best thing. She goes, what's that? And he pulls out a tray, and he hands her the tray and goes, you get this. She goes, what do I do with this? He goes, well, every once in a while, I'm going to get really thirsty, and I'm going to snap my fingers, and you're going to bring me a drink on the tray. She goes, wait a minute, I'm your servant? He goes, no, 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 you're my cupbearer. She goes, cupbearer? He goes, no, 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 not cupbearer, cupbearer, and you're going to bring me a cup whenever I'm thirsty. He makes his daughter the servant of Mount Olympus, and he's like, you'll be happy. At least you're better off than Ilithia. She's like, who's that? He's like, exactly. And so she gets to live on Mount Olympus and just bring drinks to everybody. But she does eventually get to marry Hercules. Much, much later in the Greek mythology, after he's alive and then dies and comes up to Mount Olympus, they get to marry, so she has that going for her. Yay! Zeus is now out of children with his wife that are going to get thrones. Luckily for us, he's not done having children. The problem is, every time that he attempts to be friendly, the person he's attempting to be friendly with starts to turn him down. Because as his friendships keep happening, Hera keeps finding out about it and either doing horrible things to the person that does the friendship or killing them. So more and more girls start turning him down, which makes Zeus unhappy. Enter Leto, a titan who he gets a crush on and decides that he would like to be friendly with. But Leto is not an idiot. So when Zeus approaches her and goes, hey, how are you doing? She throws a hand in his face like, buddy, that ain't gonna happen. And he goes, oh, come on. She goes, nope. Keeps throwing the hand in his face.
No.
Not that kind of hand. That kind of hand. So Zeus is not one to take being turned down well. So he decides to go all creeper style. And so after she turns him down, he just starts following around behind her, like hiding behind bushes and stuff like that, and like driving behind her in a little white van, all those things that creepers do, and follows her until one day he finds her going swimming in this nearby pond. And as she goes and they're swimming, he's hiding behind a little bush watching her, and she keeps trying to play with these swans that are going around in the pond. Why? I have no idea, but she really wants to play with these swans. But the swans won't respond to her. She keeps going, come here, swans, come play with me. And the swan's like, ha, 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 and running away. So Zeus goes, oh, you want to play with a swan? We can make that happen. And turns himself into a gigantic white swan, and then swans his way out, swans his way out onto the pond. Goes right up next to her. She's like, oh, Swan, will you play with me? And he's like, "Rrr." She's like, are you a friendly swan? He's like, "Rrr." And so they start playing the rest of the afternoon. I have no idea how you play. Throw a stick and it's like, it goes after, surfs on the swan's back. But the story says she played with the swan the whole rest of the afternoon. That evening, she decides it's time to go home. She says, Swan, I had a great day hanging out with you. I'm so glad you were here. I think I love you, Swan. If you were a person, I'd marry you. I love you so much. It's too bad you're a swan. And the swan goes, and turns back into Zeus. He goes, how you doing? Leto goes, oh, Swan, you were Zeus the whole time? He goes, uh-huh. She goes, okay. Friendship. And so because of that, she gives in and friendly. And, of course, she gets pregnant. Soon after she gets pregnant, Hera finds out. How? Probably Iris snitched. That's what she did. And so, but anyway, Hera finds out about the whole Leto being pregnant because of Zeus. So Hera decides to confront Leto and gets right up in her face.
That's fun.
And he goes, hey, rumor is you done been friendly with my man, and now you're pregnant from that. And so because of that, I'm going to get involved. And Leto's like, hey, I apologize. He was a swan. And Hera's like, that just makes it weirder. And she's like, he found me, he was creeping on me. And Hera's like, you're only making a stranger. And Hera goes, all right, here's what we're going to do. Because my man is the king of everything on land. As long as you're in his kingdom, you can't stop running. Leto goes, what do you mean I can't stop running? Hera goes, you can't stop running because if you do, that's going to eat you. And this gigantic snake called Python comes rising up out of the ground and lands behind her, about the size of an Empire State Building on its side. Leto freaks out, takes off running. Snake takes off after her and keeps chasing her. Hera just walks away giggling, wah ha 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 ha, goes up to Mount Olympus. This snake continues to chase her. Her, Leto, being a Titan, she doesn't have to stop for things like food, water, going to the bathroom, or giving birth. So she continues to run for years. And as she runs, she gets pregnanter and pregnanter and pregnanter until as she's running, she's like knocking down trees as she's going by because she's spent the last many, many years being pregnant. As she runs by Mount Olympus, every time she goes past it, she yells up at Zeus, I hate you so much. And as the years go by, Zeus begins to feel a little bit responsible for all this. He's like, I kind of feel like I was kind of involved in all this. She's like, you were! So Zeus decides to help her solve it. So he comes up with a plan. He goes, here's what we're going to do. In order to get the curse to be broken, I'm going to have you jump from land onto a floating island that's off the side of this little cliffy area. When you land on the island, I'm going to have my brother cut the string that connects the land island to the land ground. Because everyone knows islands are just big floating bobbers connected by a string. Common knowledge. Once we separate that, no longer connected to my kingdom, thus breaking the curse, and thus you'll be able to have your children, and everything will be okay. And she's like, well, this better work. He goes, I'm pretty sure it will. I had trouble finding pictures of running pregnant women, so use your imagination. That was the best I could do. Running pregnant women. I also had trouble finding pictures of running snake. I have no idea why it looks like he's wearing a sombrero, so use your imagination. And so the snake chases her all the way until she gets to the cliff. She leaps, lands onto the island. As the snake gets ready to leap onto the island after her, before it can get to that point, Poseidon comes up, breaks the little land string, separating the whole thing, and as soon as that happens, it breaks the curse, and the snake stops. And as soon as she can stop, and the snake stops, she goes, woo, and gives birth to two full-grown children, flop, flop, who come out. These two full-grown children are Artemis and Apollo.
Yes.
Artemis and Apollo really not happy at spending their entire childhood in their mommy's belly. So because of that, they immediately turn around and decide to kill this snake. It's the only way to break the curse and have her leave the island. So they look over at these trees that are nearby and decide to make bow and arrows to kill the snake. They take the trees down, make bow. Mr. Brovicast, where do they get the strings? They're umbilical cords. And so they went ahead and snap, pulled off their own umbilical cords, put it around the trees, and then shot the snake, killing it dead. As soon as the snake dies, the curse is now broken, and Leto is free. Excuse me. Hera ends up feeling bad for Artemis and Apollo. She's like, I don't forgive your mom. She made a poor choice. But she feels a special connection to these two kids growing up inside of their mom and losing their childhood. Why would she feel a connection to them?
That's their childbirth.
She is the god of childbirth.
Not because she's the god of childbirth,
Because
That's what she did in Chronos.
because that's what happened with her in Kronos. The fact that she lost her childhood because she was swallowed by her parent and lost a childhood. She goes, I will forgive these two, and I will bring Artemis and Apollo up to Mount Olympus. So she brings Artemis and Apollo up to Mount Olympus and lets them have thrones. So in their posters, every time you see them, because they killed the snake that chased their mom with a bow and arrow, you'll see the fact that they must always have bow and arrow in their pictures, bow and arrows in the pictures, bow and arrow in the pictures. Not only on top of that, the fact that because they were considered twins, the thing they represent is considered twins, which would be
Moon and sun.
the sun and the moon. Artemis is connected to the moon, Apollo the sun. Sun and moon, up in that area. So they usually get connected to bow and arrows, archery, hunting, and then the sun and the moon. Plus a little bit extra stuff, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Artemis, the two main things she'll be connected to is the moon and hunting. She was the god of hunting. Anytime you wanted to go hunting and kill something, that is who you would pray to. For a hand sign to go along with her, I figure the hunting will be the biggest thing she's known for, and she hunts with the bow and arrow. So we're going to have you use your inner Katniss Everdeen and use your bow and arrow, whoop, ka-choo, and release it. And here is where, once again, not only should many of you not use tools, many of you should probably never use a bow and arrow. Mr. Robiak, I'm going hunting. No, you're not. I'm not sure what you're doing. You're just exercising. Apollo, her brother, not really connected to the bow and arrow thing nearly as much. He was more like showing off with the bow and arrow. The biggest thing he gets connected to is he becomes the sun god. He's the one that drives the sun from one side, one mountain to the other throughout the day. The other big thing he becomes the god of is incredibly hot guys, which is a weird thing to be the god of, but he was the best looking of all the titans to ever exist. So because of that, he becomes the god of anything chicks would dig. Because chicks dig hot guys, he also becomes the god of music, because chicks dig music. He becomes the god of poetry, because chicks dig poetry. He becomes the god of art, because chicks dig art. Anything that chicks dig, he's like, I call dibs on that, because chicks dig it. I call dibs on that, because chicks dig it. So he becomes the god of hot guys and the sun. Because of that, the hand sign we're going to do for him, pretty much anytime you're outside and it's really sunny and hot, or anytime you see that really hot guy, is, Mr. Robiak, I know exactly what you're talking about. There you go. You're going to fan yourself. If not, then apparently you've just not seen a hot enough guy. Yes?
Why did Artemis get to be one of the Olympians, but none of his other brothers?
Oh, that's a good question, because he has issues.
Wait, what was the question?
Athena, well, why Artemis gets to become an Olympian as one of his daughters, none of his other daughters do. I mean,
Hera's
he also
mad.
makes Athena. Athena's also his daughter.
Because Hera is mad.
Yeah, because
To be fair,
And technically, it wasn't his choice on Artemis. That was Hera's. So we'll go with
Hera
that.
like turns into Hulk.
Yes, dear.
Why is one of the, I don't know who it
Because we don't study that version of it. This one we're going to get to in a moment. There's two versions of how Aphrodite came to be, and that's one we don't do. If leaving it on there just confused kids.
Oh, it's like the sea foam thing.
Yeah. So
But
we're gonna get to that.
Ariel.
Artemis, by the way, with her brother being the god of Hades and the sun, Artemis is also the god of women who decide not to get married. It was whatever it might be, because her brother was such a player, she chose to go the complete opposite direction and just throw her hand in dude's face and be like, not getting married because y'all be yucky. And so anytime that you were
Nah.
a different hand that we're throwing, not this hand,
I'll throw the other
that
hand.
hand,
Isn't she like the only virgin?
the unmarried one. Yep.
So her favorite singer is Lady Gaga because of all the single ladies.
Works. That's actually Beyonce. But yes.
All the things-
I don't know why.
I mean, Mr. Robiak.
Rush.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Ilithia. Illithia. Now, this next one's going to go all the way back to Kronos overthrowing his father. When Kronos was overthrowing Uranus and chased him to the edge of the earth, every time that he jumped up, he chopped into Uranus, And what happened every time he chopped into Uranus?
Animals. Something fell out.
Things fell out, and when they hit the ground, they would then form new creatures. One of those times where he did the choppy bits, a bit fell out and hit the ocean. In the ocean, it formed a Titan that floated out there for years. And this Titan remained out in the ocean for thousands of years without being discovered, just floating along. Throughout all the overthrowing, throughout Zeus taking over, throughout Poseidon getting the oceans, through all these different parts, she just keeps on floating. Till one day, as she's floating along, she goes from the ocean to her foot touching the beach. And as soon as her foot touches the beach, a certain god knows that she's alive. Because suddenly she's in his kingdom. And that would be? Aphrodite is the girl. And because while she was in the ocean, Poseidon just didn't really care. But as soon as her foot touches the land, Zeus knows that she's alive. Not only does he know that she's alive, she is the hottest woman to ever exist. So as soon as that foot hits the land, Zeus up on Mount Olympus, talking, and he's like, hey, so what should we do? There's a new hot person alive, and just takes off running. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and then runs down, he's like, Rrr! He's like, hey, how you doing? She's like, I don't know what's going on. He's like, what's important is that my name is Zeus, and I'm the god of everything you see. Just don't look at the ocean. But everything in this direction, I'm the god of, and you are incredibly good looking. To the point where Zeus is like drooling when he's looking. He's like, getting kind of creepy. And he realizes this is going to be a problem because he keeps getting himself into issues with his wife, but at the same time he can't stop staring at Aphrodite. So he decides to try and solve this problem as best he can. So he goes, listen, you're incredibly good looking. And I would like to spend all my free time staring at you creepily. I own this really big house with a bunch of chairs. Would you like to come up and sit in a chair so that I can stare at you and I'll let you be a god and control things? She goes, I have no idea what's going on, so sure. So he brings Aphrodite back up to Mount Olympus and gives her a throne. But once she's up there, bad things start happening. All the other male gods keep trying to get her attention to get married. And so they spend all their time trying to flirt with her. All the girls spend their time trying to figure out ways to stab her because all the guys are spending their time trying to flirt with her. So Zeus realizes this is not going to solve anything because even though he likes staring at her, so does everyone else like staring at her. So because of that, he goes, all right, here's how we're going to solve this problem. Aphrodite, you're going to get married. And that way we don't have to worry about people trying to marry you and stuff like that. She goes, oh yeah, I can't wait to choose who I'm going to marry. He goes, that's hilarious. I've already chosen for you. She goes, oh, am I marrying you? He goes, what? No, you and I would never get married. I already have a wife and I love her very much. Wink. She goes, oh, then am I going to marry the really good-looking guy over there who's all shiny and bright? He's like, no, you're not going to marry him. She goes, ooh, am I going to marry the guy over there juggling all the fish? And he's like, no, you're not going to marry him too. He's like, ooh, the dark guy over there in the back playing the guitar, writing poetry. He's like, no, you're not going to marry him too. She's like, the only person left is the ugly crippled guy that's sitting over in the corner crying. And Zeus goes, yep, that's who you're going to marry. And so he declares that Aphrodite is going to marry Hephaestus. This is his way of apologizing to his son for crippling him for life. Hey, sorry I threw you out a window, thus making you the only crippled titan to ever exist. How would you like to marry a really hot girl? Hephaestus goes, Father, you're completely forgiven. Cripple me whenever you want. And so Hephaestus and Aphrodite get married. Aphrodite immediately celebrates this by going out and getting a boyfriend. Because she hates Hephaestus, because she says, look at this, look at that. I don't think so. So she goes out and finds herself someone to date. Her choice is the person that she thinks will irritate Hephaestus the most. The one person he hates most in the world.
Aries.
And that would be Ares, his brother. Which is why in the posters back over here, I put Aphrodite between Hephaestus and Ares. And I tried to make Hephaestus a little bit higher, because that's the one she's married to, but Ares is the one that she spends all her time with. Which is why in the picture over here, we have Aphrodite sitting in the middle, next to her husband Hephaestus, but she's lovingly looking up into Ares' eyes while touching his arm. And so that's why, once again, not a very nice person. The one behind is Hestia, because Hestia is the only good god. In all of our stories of Greek mythology, Hestia is the only one where there's no stories of her being mean or a jerk or nasty to other people. So she's trying to help Hephaestus.
I thought you were just really bad at hanging posters.
The crookediness?
No, like those ones.
Oh, no, that was on purpose. Oddly enough. This one being crooked was because I'm really bad at hanging posters.
Yeah.
That one over there was on purpose. So Aphrodite becomes the god of love and beauty. She's also the god of being a horrible person. Aphrodite is one of the worst people that will exist in Greek mythology. She does almost nothing good the entire time. Ironic, being the fact that she was the god of falling in love when she herself never falls in love. It was just the fact that she was incredibly good looking. So to help you remember the fact that she is the god of love, even though she has issues, we're going to do the whole half circle, and the half circle, and then you bring your two little half circles together and it makes a little, it's like a full circle. I've had other people who do some kind of weird like gang sign, you can do like a little, I don't know, whatever kind of gang sign you want to do like that.
gang signs
or
are
you can
not
do like a
allowed
little,
in school.
Yeah, that's violating school code.
What about the guardian gang?
well, when you throw your love gang signs, the I hate you gang signs are going to come at you, and then you guys can have some kind of throwdown in the hallways.
I just remember Aphrodite is the god of love because afro, and everybody loves afros.
Because everybody does love afros. They're so fluffy, they move when you turn your head.
Afros?
Who would not love those?
Like Aphrodite.
This is where you get the word aphrodisiac, which is a word that means a love potion that makes you fall in love with someone.
I like
That's not a
Aphrodite.
real thing, though.
Is that a real thing?
It is. You could actually Google that one. Yes.
That's a real thing.
Why is there a flying baby stroking her hair as she strokes a goose?
The goose, I have no idea on that one. The flying baby is Eros, which is otherwise known as Cupid, which was her son.
Why is he
I think it might be a swan.
What
But
if
the
that's
swan
Zeus
is connected to Leto, so I have no idea why they have a swan in Aphrodite's.
Wait, why does he have wings though?
Eros, aside
Looks
from
like
Nike, is the
Cupid.
only other winged one. You know, he wasn't really a full god and shows up until much later, but he was the same thing as Cupid, who does the shooting arrows and make people fall in love. He was actually from Greek mythology. It's just in Greek mythology, his name is Eros, and then Romans called him Cupid. So now Aphrodite exists, and she's up on Mount Olympus. Then, shortly after this, Zeus gives birth to a brain baby, and he gives this brain baby a throne on Mount Olympus. And the brain baby is? And this is where Athena comes in. All of a sudden, one day, he's like, ah! And out she comes flying from his brain.
Wait,
That you have a question about?
what?
What's up?
How does Hera not, like, if Hera's a god too, then how does she not know where Athena came from?
Because have you ever seen a guy give birth from a baby from his brain? Neither had she. And he was like, it's a miracle. She's like, I've got no other explanation, so sure. And Athena wasn't saying anything because she wanted to have a throne. So she goes, yeah, I'm a miracle. That works for me too. And of course, what is Athena the god of?
Wisdom and war.
The main one is wisdom, although she is also the god of war, which is good to know. But the main one we'll focus on is the god of wisdom. And I figure the hand sign for her, we're going to point to where she was born from.
Ahead.
There you go. Point to the god of wisdom from the brain.
Oh my
Zoe?
God, it's so funny.
Isn't Zeus and Hera, were they like siblings?
Brother and sister.
So then, why did he marry her if
Well-
he didn't like her?
He does like her. He just likes other people too. He's just very friendly. He doesn't not like her. He just liked her the mostest for a while. At this point, ooh, here's a question. How many thrones are left to fill in on Mount Olympus?
2.
Nope.
1.
Why?
Because of that one person. Because
Hestia still has a throne. So we only have one throne left. At this point, Zeus tries to swear off the whole being friendly with Titans. He's like, Hera, no more being friendly with Titans for a while. I'm going to try to be good, at least as far as you know. And so he's not, the trick here is that he swears off being friendly with Titans, not being friendly, period. And what he ends up doing now is finding what's called a wood nymph, which in Greek mythology were the same thing as elves. And he goes down to earth, sort of shrinks his size down, and ends up finding a wood nymph by the name of Maya, M-A-I-A. And he and this wood nymph get together for friendliness, but he figures it's a wood nymph, so whatever. But wood nymphs apparently are a special type of creature. So soon after the friendliness happens, she gets pregnant, as in that same day. Tomorrow we'll finish out what happens when you're friendly with a wood nymph.